So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anna Kirby. I'm a clinical oncologist working at the Royal Marsden in the UK. I have been there for about 22 years now, and I have almost exclusively worked in radiotherapy for breast cancer. I'm a trialist, as I'll come on to describe in a second, and I'm also currently the president of the European Society for Radiotherapy and Oncology. And just to preface our panel discussion, I thought I would do just 10 minutes of sort of looking through the crystal ball at what's to come. And I came up with this title, but then realised that 2030 is only 7 years away. So I'm going to start with 2030, but then we'll go a little bit further with that crystal ball, just to put our discussions in context. So if I think about how my breast radiotherapy practice is going to look in 7 years' time, I think there are going to be 4 key elements to how my practice is changing. So firstly, we are continuing to reduce the number of radiotherapy treatments, and I'll show you a timeline for that in a second. Secondly, we are much more leveraging smarter, more targeted techniques. That's right across the board, from our adjuvant patients to increasingly our oligometastatic patients. Then we are much more individualizing our therapy recommendations, moving away from that one-size-fits-all, and then increasingly optimizing workflow. And obviously, the overall aim of everything that we do is to optimize cure, to reduce side effects for our patients, and to do everything as efficiently as possible for our healthcare systems, but most importantly, for our patients. So if I give you the example of the field in which I've been working, that's radiotherapy for breast cancer. When I first started as an SHO at the Royal Marsden in 2001, everyone was getting 5 weeks of radiotherapy. Everyone was coming in with skin desquamation in the armpits and underneath the breast. Everyone was getting very much the same technique, and it was 2-dimensionally planned. And we've had 2 big strands of research going on, one looking at delivering treatment over a shorter time frame, lower doses, and reaching to the 1-week time frame that we have as a standard of care now, and then the smarter treatments of using intensity modulated radiotherapy, either to reduce dose to the bits of breast that don't need any dose, or to increase dose to the areas that are at highest risk. And so using advances in technology, looking at how we can deliver those efficiently by recruiting nationally really quickly to these trials. The most famous example of that being the Fast Forward trial that recruited 4,000 patients in just 2 years. In the UK, we've been able to make these dramatic differences to patient care over the time that I've been working in oncology. And so most of our breast cancer patients can now be treated in 1 week with much lower doses than we were seeing before. Very few of them get this desquamation, and we're also tailoring that radiotherapy to risk level, and we've got a little bit further to go with that. But of course, with the really low event rates that we have in breast cancer, we need really big numbers for these trials now, and so anything that we do from here on in really does require international collaboration. But to really sort of get the creative juices going, let's think about how radiation oncology is going to look in 2050. Here's an article from some predecessor ESTRO presidents from our society. So there's no doubt that radiation is going to continue to remain a key weapon in the oncology armamentarium. And not least because cancer cases are going to carry on increasing, as we heard earlier from Mary. And of course, our cancer population is going to become older, as are the people who are delivering it. Early detection is likely to increase. Liquid biopsies really taking off, ctDNA detection to firstly find cancers early, to find relapses early, and a higher proportion of our cancers, therefore, hopefully going to be curable. So the positioning of radiotherapy will probably move more towards being an adversary of surgery rather than maybe at the radiotherapy systemic therapy interface. But then also in terms of workflow, the majority of our patients are going to be treatable using really standard and therefore automatable techniques, with a smaller proportion needing the more potentially more expensive technologically advanced treatment. As ever, innovation is going to be happening at interfaces, but there'll perhaps be new interfaces. So things particularly like data science will become increasingly important. And we've heard a lot about implementation science as well. We've already mentioned the need for collaboration in terms of delivering on randomized controlled trials, if that's an avenue we want to continue going down. And we also want to become much better at implementing more widely what we've already learned, so ensuring equity of access to the highest quality radiotherapy. And that requires, as we've said, health services research, international agreements on guidelines, and protocolized automated treatment pathways as far as is possible. Now, there are many people out there thinking about how healthcare as a whole is going to change, and these are the 5 things that the World Economic Forum think are going to be very important in the next 10 to 20 years. And if we take one of those, artificial intelligence, which seems to dominate many of our scientific programs at the moment and seems to be absolutely critical to everything, I too have used, in collaboration with a colleague, ChatGPT, to ask what might be the sort of minimal impact of artificial intelligence, but what might, in our wildest dreams, be happening in 30 years' time. And it's no surprise that turkeys don't vote for Christmas, so ChatGPT actually doesn't really tell you anything mild that's going to happen with AI. It absolutely supports AI being absolutely crucial to everything that we do. And you'll see the many areas in which we think AI will have an impact, probably because most innovation is incremental. We probably will be towards that more mild impact bit of the table, but these are still dramatic differences in how we deliver radiation or oncology care. In terms of what things are going to look like for the consumer, they're going to want greater transparency, more accessibility. They really want to know that their treatment has been personalised to them as an individual and to their individual cancer. We'll have much more automated, modular, more local treatment. Then there'll be lots more in the way of interoperable data, smart AI, identifying illnesses earlier, being able to intervene earlier, much greater focus on well-being than treatment. And then how's the industry going to evolve to match all of these developments in healthcare? And I've already highlighted that there'll be very different industry segments in play. People like myself will probably be reduced to specialty care operators, however we want to define that. And clinical informaticians are likely to become a much bigger player in what we do day to day. So what's my job going to look like? I probably won't be working in 2050, but more automated and robotic treatment options for everything from delineation to delivery, AI-assisted decision support systems. Hopefully we're going to wave goodbye at some point to these 2 to 3 hour multidisciplinary meetings that we have where I just say radiotherapy sort of every 5 minutes. That can all be done by a computer and I can be free to do something else. And then we're going to be much more working, yes, as I say, at this interface with AI. So our clinical decision-making really is very streamlinable and, again, frees us all to do more interesting things with our time. So back to 2023, we'll think as a panel about how to accelerate innovation, and it's really important, of course, that all the stakeholders understand why we need to accelerate innovation, and it's come up several times today that one of our biggest priorities is managing the huge workforce crisis. It's all very well having a cancer plan that says we need to increase radiotherapy availability for our population, but if you have no one to deliver it, you can't get anywhere. And so we know that we are going to have huge numbers of missing healthcare workers from the sector globally. In the EU, a 1 million shortage. Aging, chronic disease and burnout amongst practitioners is likely to exacerbate this. And then, of course, we've got an aging population as well that will have a greater need for healthcare. Efforts to increase recruitment and retention likely to fall a long way short, and not least, it takes a decade from the point at which you identify someone to train to get them up to speed, such that using AI for the most routine aspects of what we do day to day is a really urgent problem to solve. The extent of that change could range from using AI to decision make, to cognitive assistance. Wouldn't this be lovely to help us prioritize our emails, which would, again, free many hours a day. Many ethical, financial, equity aspects to adopting AI, but it seems to me that no action is absolutely not an option. Many of you will have seen images like that. There are increasing numbers of reviews out there about how AI can influence every aspect of the treatment pathway, from the decision making to how we do follow-up. But absolutely critically, as I've just highlighted, the training of an AI model can obviously be completely and immediately downloaded to the next bit of AI, whereas it takes quite a bit of time to train a human expert across the lifetime of their career. Just going to end with the importance of health services research and data generation for innovative radiotherapy. This was highlighted in the last session. ESTRO has a health economics in radiation oncology aspect to it. This is led by Yolanda Evans and Ajay Agarwal. And the value-based framework for radiation oncology aims to develop a framework which is able to define and assess the value of innovations in radiotherapy in order to support clinical implementation and equitable access, all within a healthcare system that's sustainable. And I know we discussed many of these aspects earlier, so I won't dwell on it. In terms of overcoming barriers to innovation in healthcare, again, we might pick up on some of these in the panel discussion, but again, as highlighted earlier, really important that there is a co-design aspect in order to develop products that address actual needs, rather than the other way around, where we often seem to be presented with a product and then we're sort of scrabbling around trying to find a place for it. And sometimes these things have been hugely expensive to develop, so it's always a shame when we can't find a use for them. I'm not naming any particular technologies, but I'd be happy to go into that in the panel discussion. At a sort of institutional and a system level, innovation often seen as a sort of luxury aspect to what we do, but hopefully I've highlighted it's absolutely a necessity, and very important that institutions should incorporate innovation absolutely at board level. We need to assess our innovations in a timely way, and I've given some clues to that along the way. Often, certainly in my institution, the focus is on sort of short-term solutions, so people get given little pockets of money to do this and that's all important, but it's really important that we think bigger in terms of transforming whole care pathways and not just nibbling away at little bits of it. And then, again, as has come up in discussion earlier, perhaps disproportionate investment in the development aspect versus how we adopt and implement innovations, and a real need for adaptive leadership that is going to work at the interfaces that I described earlier. I'm going to end with a very little plug for our ESTRO Congress, which is in Glasgow next year. For various reasons, highly unlikely we're going to have another Congress in the UK, so please come whilst you can. There's going to be a Cayley, if that attracts anybody. And this is all focused on bridging the care gap. And interestingly, we always have a fun closing debate, which this year we've called Clash of the Tartans, the great AI debate. And we're always a little bit provocative, but this house believes that radiation therapy care will be delivered entirely by bots by 2040. Look forward to seeing many of you there.
Great, thank you. Thank you. I was wondering if we could take questions on the panel. Just so would our panellists like to come up now? Ricky, thank you. Yeah, do have a seat. It's a perch, I'm afraid. Yes. And so perhaps if our other two could introduce yourselves, Ricky.
Ricky Sharma. I'm a medical doctor, a clinical scientist, and a business executive. So in terms of those three, I've been an oncologist for about 2 decades. I led translational research, both at Oxford and at UCL, where I'm still have an honorary clinical professor post. And in terms of business, I'm the head of clinical affairs at Varian, which is a Siemens Healthineers company. And the way I tie those 3 things together is my mission is to create a world without fear of cancer.
That's lovely. Goran.
Hello, everyone. My name is Goran Marošević. I'm a radiation oncologist with 15 years experience in radiation oncology. And recently I moved to Croatia, and I work for one private, actually the biggest private healthcare provider in Croatia, the Medical Group, as a medical director of a new special oncology hospital medical project, which is, by the way, approved by the Croatian government as a strategic investment project for the state.
That's lovely. Oh, fantastic to have you all. And I know it's our last session now, and I know some of you have to whiz off on time, and there is some drinks afterwards, but so we can do our discussion and always carry on. So Anna, you gave your talk. No, I'm thinking of going back to the question that they had earlier on in the morning about what policy do you need at a European level to introduce innovation? Sorry, nobody seemed to be able to answer that this morning, so I thought I'd throw that one at you.
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer that
Give us a go.
either. I mean, no, so there is a European beating cancer plan, and that's brilliant. Radiotherapy is not a huge focus of that in and of
So
itself.
we need it to be.
So we need it to be a little bit more upfront. So, I mean, quite rightly, the European Beating Cancer Plan focuses a lot on prevention, and that is very, very important. It's woven in there, but yes, I think we, as has been hinted at in earlier sessions and as we had in discussion, radiation oncologists and our associated healthcare professionals don't perhaps put ourselves forward in quite the way that we might. But more than just sort of asking for more kit and for more people, we need to think cleverly about how we're going to deliver radiotherapy, because the reality is the people just aren't out there.
And that's why we need technology. And do the European Commission listen to Estro? And if not, why not?
Well, we are a professional society. We focus mostly on science, and we've also got education, training. Advocacy is a bit of what we do. It's not been the main thing that we do. We mainly work in partnership with other organisations. So the European Cancer Organisation we would see as the sort of biggest players in that part. And I think it's really important that all the societies and organisations play to their strengths. So they are brilliant at what they do, and we interact and provide expertise in what they're doing. But yes, that's not our primary focus.
No, but well done for your leadership of Estro. Fantastic. So Ricky,
Could I add one point to that?
Yes,
Just thinking about cancer plans and from the industry perspective, I think one thing is access to care, which we've talked about this morning. But one thing that wasn't discussed in this morning's discussion was the use of enterprise services. So for example, if there are particular gaps in a department's workflow, it is possible to bridge those gaps, maybe using a hybrid approach. Sometimes it can be remote services that can help. Sometimes it can be AI that can help. And sometimes you can actually bring people in from industry to fill those gaps. So that's called enterprise services. And you can do a pathway analysis where you find the bottlenecks, the process bottlenecks, and then you can address them in terms of a short, medium-term plan. It can even be a 10-year plan. I mean, we did this in the Philippines recently, where we were working with AC Health at a national level to think about cancer care at a national level, to think about a hybrid model, which is not just in-person with a hub and spokes model in Manila, but also combining remote services with in-person services, and then linking up those hospitals with some of our other hospitals, which we have in our network, to train RTTs, to train oncologists, and to create cancer specialist areas. So that's something on the access. But then in terms of the cancer plan from the patient perspective, now speaking as an oncologist rather than from industry, I think we don't always put the patient right at the center of everything that we do. And Tim Mon, who worked with me in Oxford, used to talk about the right treatment for the right patient at the right time. But there is another component to that, and that is actually having the reimbursement to do that. So it's the right payment to the hospital for the right treatment for the right patient at the right time. So we're not always working at that level in terms of the reimbursement, for example, for hypofractionation or for adaptive radiotherapy, which a lot of patients should be accessing now, but don't because of reimbursement.
And so where have we gone wrong in reimbursement? Because I'm sure in these lovely immunotherapy drugs, which are wonderful, they don't cost 50,000 to make. So there's all this, we've got to invest in the research, etc. Why aren't we making that case in radiotherapy? Why are we always trying to reduce the cost down?
Well, it's partly the regulatory pathway. So, I mean, for thinking about the US, for example, the PMA is the pathway for the drugs. And, the same goes in Europe. But whereas the devices that we're talking about, a lot of them just go through a 510K, which is, just an approval for using a precedent device. So then the level of evidence required to get your 510K is much lower, and then the evidence isn't there to talk to the payers and to negotiate new tariffs. So we do need to be thinking more holistically, almost as if we're going down a PMA pathway, even if we're not going down a PMA pathway, so that we got that holistic package.
And there's a big issue, but it's basically how do we get medtech on a level playing field, really, isn't it?
With payers, as well as regulators.
And I'm liking your enterprise model. I must say, it sounds a bit like Deliveroo. We can have it at home, we can have it there, but it's a good model, because I've always thought also, why can't industry? I remember I was talking to the Chinese about this. Your machines, your therapy radiographers with it. Are we being a little bit sort of boring, and we've always done it this way? Should we be really shaking this up?
Yeah, we should. So I talked about the Philippines, but even if you look at Germany, 1 in 7 of the population in Germany have an MRI. At some point every year, and if you just don't have the trained staff to do the more complicated MRIs, like cardiac MRI, for example. So what you can do there is you can have what we call a virtual cockpit, single virtual cockpit, where you have a planning manager who could be working from home, a scan manager, and then you have patient managers doing the work on the ground. Now, they could be a lot less experienced than the scan manager, but they can follow the instructions of the scan manager. And you can have one scan manager directing 3-4 patient managers on the ground, doing much more complicated scans in smaller hospitals, which they wouldn't be able to do on their own. And so we do have to be clever about it.
And I often think about, why aren't we centrally planning? Why don't we just get somebody who can plan prostates, just do them all, get on with it? So why are we so resistant? Do we need more push from industry? Do we need more pull from clinicians or reimbursement people? What's going to break it? It's back to the policy change we need. What do we need?
Well, central planning is one of our busiest services, so we do that for quite often, particularly during the pandemic. Yeah. Physics departments were depleted; they couldn't come in, and that was a very busy time for central planning. So you need the IT for it to all be secure. A lot of it is cloud-based, but if you do cloud-based properly, it's actually more secure than the alternative. So you need the security, you need the the IT connections, and you need that awareness that you can talk to industry, and if the reimbursement models are right, then you can work together.
And I think that gets back to what we were discussing this morning about the data sharing and those problems. I do know when the ProNow was introduced to the UK, although we're an NHS, 49 different legal agreements between the trusts instead of just saying, get it done, and that took 3 years. Okay, so tell us now, what are the other innovations that are going to come in terms of education, workforce and training?
In terms of innovations, I think there's so much happening in industry in terms of innovations. I think personalization of therapy is a big one for us. So cone beam CT has really moved forward now. So just for those of you who are not aware, when a patient starts radiotherapy, the way we monitor their treatment is using cone beam CT, which is a quick and dirty CT scan that can be done on the linear accelerator, on the machine itself. And up till now, Anna and I have struggled to try and work out, where is the stomach, where is the pancreas, where is the duodenum on this scan. It's almost impossible. But that technology has significantly moved forward now. So in 6 seconds, using something called hypersight, you can get a thorax scan, which is almost the same quality as diagnostic scan. So for a patient, that is really impactful, because asking a patient to hold their breath, for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, that's difficult for us. But a patient who has lung disease, asking them to do that is almost impossible. So a 6-second scan, on the other hand, is very achievable. So that's a real innovation where, we can use that to train RTTs and radiographers to do much more RTT-led practice, and we're seeing that in adaptive radiotherapy, RTT-led services, where you can't have the physician there for every single treatment. So I think that's one area. Another area is operational efficiency, which we just talked about, looking at the whole pathway. So Anna talked about, not just nibbling away at bits of the pathway. You need to think about the pathway. And that links to the third thing, which is really transforming systems of care, which is our vision at Varian is something called 2 to 2. So taking an average waiting time of 2 weeks, in some countries like the UK, it's a lot longer than 2 weeks. Average waiting time for radiotherapy, 2 weeks globally, down to 2 hours. So can you imagine, you go and see your oncologist, you're told you need radiotherapy, and the same day you could actually start your radiotherapy. That could transform care, because in terms of combination therapies, radiotherapy plus surgery, radiotherapy plus chemo, it would transform the way it works. And personally, that's really important to me. My father was diagnosed with a high-grade non-Hodgkin's lymphoma just before the pandemic, and the waiting was the worst thing. It's waiting for the diagnosis, waiting for the chemotherapy, waiting for surgery. It's the waiting that is the worst part of that. So to be able to bring it down to a single day, that's a goal that really drives us at Varian.
That would be amazing. Amazing, amazing. Goran, can we bring you in now in terms of your experience I know you've got a lot of experience with public-private partnerships, that sort of thing. Where is that going in the future, and how can that add to the mix? What's your thinking?
Yeah. To advance radiotherapy, it does not always mean only to upgrade linear accelerators or introduce new radiotherapy techniques. It also means that, there are requirements for improving radiotherapy service network as a system in a such way that every patient who needs innovative radiotherapy have access also. So today we have initiatives such as Europe's Beating Cancer Plan and fantastic Astro Vision 2030, but the implementation is at the national level. So it is very important to have partner at the national level. Otherwise, the plan will not be implemented. So let me tell you one example. It was in my previous post in non-EU country. Actually, that country doesn't have any support of any European Union organization, but still they have a lack in radiotherapy service, and it was solved as a private investment in the government, so in the public health care, as per the public-private partnership. And still 14 years we were providing modern radiotherapy for every patient who needs that kind of therapy, and next year that private center will be part of the public healthcare system. So it's PPP can be a tool how to heal one part of the, let's say, medical treatments that, public hospitals cannot solve. So we have so many obstacles to implement modern radiotherapy, especially in Central East European countries. We know that regarding radiotherapy, European Union is deeply divided, not only regarding different healthcare systems, healthcare outcomes, but also, as you said, reimbursement rate. If you look at the reimbursement rate among European Union countries, it is really colorful. So it is really deeply divided. And there is a huge disparity. And not only that, if you look at the national radiotherapy cost per capita in European Union, out of total amount of oncology expenditure, it is in average for European Union 5%. And the national radiotherapy expenditure per capita out of total expenditure of healthcare system is 0.5%. So that means that investment only in the facilities and the equipment is very, I would say that radiotherapy is highly neglected, like a Cinderella in the oncology. So, and what about investment into people? Because the personnel is the most important thing in radiotherapy. What about that? So there is a huge gap of continuous medical education in evidence-based radiation oncology in these countries. That is a huge problem. So if you give to someone 20 linear accelerators, do you really think that those people will start with evidence-based radiation oncology, especially now with so complex, not only the treatment of the patient, but the organization of the smooth workflow, so that in East European countries, there is also a waiting list, even with 3D conformal radiotherapy, and interruptions of the treatment, which is very dangerous for the patient. So PPP actually and private investment together with public healthcare providers can be really successful story for oncology patients, because if we fight what is better, is it private or public?
Yeah, you get nowhere.
Actually, we should put the patient in the center of the problem, because only the oncology patient has a problem. We don't have problems.
Yeah. No, I think very good. And as Vicky said, if we start from the patient, and I think you made a very good point there about when we're thinking of these cancer plans and advice, we should be putting in their reimbursement rates, because if you're going to have that disparity across Europe, well, where are you going to start there? I was thinking. Now, Ricky, is there anything in your sort of your variants technology that could help sort of the more Eastern European countries, shall we say, in terms of, because in some ways I often feel we shouldn't be all going through the same things. Why can't you start at the top, start with your models, right innovatively, rather than say we'll start with the Linac and then we'll work our way up to the fancy stuff? What do you think?
Yeah, so actually it's very topical, because yesterday our CEO, Bernd Montag in Healthineers, signed an agreement with IAEA specifically on that topic.
Yes.
So that was posted
Yeah.
yesterday. And just one example of that. So electricity in low and middle income countries can be a real issue. So the Halcyon machine, which has a much higher workflow, has much lower electricity usage, and can be a smaller footprint, and just generally better suited to those environments, much more than some of the other machines that we use routinely. And we can work with systems so that we can optimize their workflows and provide training.
Yes,
as
and
required.
workflow would be very good. It was interesting, this time last year when we had the sessions, we had a lot of a trainees group together. And for a lot of Mongolia, I think it was Thailand, their biggest problem was internet's going down all the time. So actually, it's almost the electricity and the internet, you've got to have these basics before we get, but if we do, we have to do that. So Anna, in terms of your thinking and thinking about Estro, where can we be a little bit perhaps more innovative in our promotion of these wider areas we're thinking about to get this innovation on?
You mean sort of geographically?
Yeah, I think. Well, there's quite a range of problems, aren't there? Yes. And if we're all going for innovation, if we're all going linearly, I think we need to go sideways, don't we, up there?
So we've similarly had some discussions with the IAEA recently in terms of how we partner for training, and we were just about to wind down, for example, our two-dimensional planning course, because no one has a need for two-dimensional planning, but actually there are countries in the world where two-dimensional planning is actually the only way that you're going to give radiotherapy for now, hopefully not for long. But yeah, in terms of what we're providing to where, understanding the need in different areas is absolutely the place to start, because we come in and go, oh, protons are better for breast cancer. Well, no, actually that's like a tiny problem. We just need to be able to give radiotherapy for breast cancer. The other aspect was in terms of fractionation and linking into your point about reimbursement. And again, if we focus on the reimbursement aspect, we miss the fact that basically hypofractionation is really good in breast cancer, but the sub-Saharan African guidelines are based on the US guidelines, and in the US, for some reason, I cannot work out, they're still giving 50 gray and 25 fractions for breast cancer. So forget the reimbursement. Just talk about the evidence base, which is the patients simply don't need more than 5 fractions of radiotherapy for breast cancer. So, to the fundamental point, understand what the need is. And address those problems, which is often a very, very simple solution, not the very complex thing.
Yeah, so complex and yet simple as well. Questions from the floor now. Got some great. Surely we've got somebody wants to know more about innovation. Okay, so I'll finish it off with some tricky ones, okay? Where will I start? What's going to be the innovation that's going to make the biggest step change in the next 5 years? You can start.
Well, I think
What's your top tip?
depends.
No, we're holding you to
Depends
it. Yes.
which region you speak about.
Good point. Yes, exactly right. Yeah.
So I believe
Okay,
that.
tell us about Eastern Europe then.
Oh, Eastern
Tell us
Europe.
about you.
I hope that better organization of radiotherapy service network will be better.
Okay, right.
I believe and I hope that something will change in motivation of radiation oncologists to do better things.
Oh, it's back to the question we had earlier
So
on. We're just not
I
tough
don't
enough.
think so. When you said, what about Astro? Astro has fantastic Astro school calendar and education. And I had also, during my residency and my education, I attended those courses. It was excellent. It was free of charge for me because I was from Bosnia, from
Yeah.
East part, supported by also International Atomic Agency. So, but you have people that they are not motivated. It doesn't matter if you have fantastic education or they don't have to pay for it. So we need to motivate people. It is very hard in these countries if radiation oncologist or specialist for oncology and radiotherapy can choose whether he would like to deal with radiotherapy and there is nothing for him, especially if the salary is very low, or with pharmacy, and that's good.
But
That's
yes.
fantastic.
Come to
So
us, go.
if you
Yes.
look at the biggest public university clinical center in Zagreb, they have 20 specialists of oncology and radiotherapy. Only 3 out of 20 of them wants to deal with radiotherapy. 3 out of 20.
That's a really good
So
point. We'll note that.
you can buy to them linear accelerators, but I don't know what will change for oncology patients.
Good. Anna, your top tip for what's going to make the step change?
Automation.
Oh,
Just
okay.
automate absolutely everything wherever you can, and free humans to
And that might
think
motivate them
creatively.
then, all that lovely automation, yes. Ricky, final word for
Yeah,
Vario.
so it links
What's-
with what Anna said, it's artificial intelligence. So, I mean, we already do this in our everyday lives. You know, we're happy to use face recognition on our phones.
Exactly.
You know, we're happy to use Siri and Alexa. Sorry if I activated that on your phone just now.
ChatGPT.
And ChatGPT, we've seen it in several. In fact, I was going to get ChatGPT to introduce me at the beginning, but it would have got it wrong. I think we're already seeing it in radiotherapy. So in a click of a button, you can use AI Rad Companion. You can get 150 organs outlined. You know, and it would. You know, when we were training, that would take us 2.5 hours probably to do
Days.
that. Some of them are more difficult. And you're still the case. It still takes manually. That still takes hours. And now you can do it in a click of a button. You can have your scan done. You can have it with all the organs outlined. You know, with like we talked about difficult scans that can be done like that. But you know, the adaptive radiotherapy. You know, the reason we can turn patients around in 15 minutes on a daily basis for adaptive radiotherapy on Ethos is because of the AI, where you can bring all the different imaging modalities in and replan the patient in less than 15 minutes. So on average. You know, that is already transforming radiotherapy, but as it gets distributed across the whole pathway for the patient, you will see the changes happening.
And as we are ahead of the game here, we should be leading other bits of medicine as well. Great. Well, we're going to leave you at that because I know some people have to give up. Thank you very much. And just to say, I remember the days I was taught to hand plan. I'm that old. so lots of changes. But thank you very much. A round of applause for the speakers. Thank you.